Come join us each week as we dive into topics about the joys and the struggles of motherhood. By no means are we experts. We're practically flying by the seat of our pants, or should I say, mom jeans. On this podcast, you will find a judgment-free zone where we discuss not only the best parts of being a mom, but the not-so-glamorous parts too. You can expect unfiltered, real mom talk, humor, grace, and a sense of sisterhood. What makes our podcast unique is that we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to being a mother. We're not going to pretend that we know everything too, because we definitely don't. We just want a place to share our stories with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Well, welcome back to another episode of Mom Jeans. Today we have another guest, Holly Surratt, and we're so excited that she's here. Today she's going to talk to us a little bit about her family and her son who has PANS and how they're kind of navigating that and how they're on a journey of healing. And we're just excited to learn a little bit more and to talk to you about that today. Holly and I actually went to college together and we didn't even know it when we graduated.
It's a shame. I feel like we could have.
I know. But that's how you met your husband, right, Zach? Yeah. So Zach and I went to high school together and then college together. And so that's how we know each other. And then so I kind of found you through, he was posting all these like really great pictures of like your little family. It's so cute. And I was like, oh, so I went over to your page and I love looking at it. It's very aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, all your pictures are great. And so we'll talk a little bit about that too here a little bit later. But before we kind of dive into all of this, we're going to do our high lows of the week, and then we'll get started. So I'll go ahead with my high low. The high, we went camping for the first time this season. And it was a lot of fun. But then the low is Weston and I both got sick. And so we're kind of just now getting over that. And so sleeping in a trailer with a sick baby and also me not feeling very well and just small quarters was definitely challenging, but you couldn't beat the view. So that was like the high of my week. Lisa, do you want to go next?
Man, you just talked so fast. That was so fast.
Yeah. Well,
because
I talk fast when I'm nervous.
Yeah, you know, my high lows always go so long compared to everybody. Everybody's like, get me over with. But yeah, so I have, it's crazy. So Hannah's daycare doesn't have any school this week. So my father-in-law flew in from Michigan to watch her. And it's been really nice because obviously Brandon and I both are, you know, making sure we get to work and do everything like that. And I came home on Tuesday from work, and he loves to work with the kids and like, you know, teach them new things. And Hannah came back and I took her to the grocery store so he could get a break. And she was like saying full sentences and doing all this crazy stuff. And I was like, man, he needs to start his own daycare. Like he is so, and he's like, no, thank you. This is a lot. So it was really cool to see that. And then I picked up Aubrey the same day from daycare and brought her home, and she's just like rolling like crazy, and it's actually helping her sleep a ton, which is nice because now she can flip onto her belly and that's where she wants to sleep and doesn't freak out that she's stuck on her belly. So that was like, oh man, that was like a huge, it's crazy when you see them go through these milestones so fast and you're like, wait, slow down. I want to enjoy this a little bit longer, but very fun to watch those go. But yeah, so my highs were just, you know, the progression and how things are going with them. So that's good. And then my low, you know, if you've listened to episodes before, I just harp on my parents all the time. So one last harp on my parents. We'll go into that. But we were down in Phoenix where they live, and my father-in-law flew into Phoenix. He gets along really well. We're actually all going on a vacation, 2-week vacation together. My parents, Brandon's parents, my brother and us are going for 2 weeks this summer. But they get along fine, but whatever. And so I came up early for a concert on Sunday, which was like my first time away from Aubrey, and it was wonderful and way too short. And I wish I had at least another day to do stuff for myself. But Tom, my father-in-law, was down stayed at my parents so that they could all watch the girls while Brandon was playing in his hockey tournament, and I was up here at going to the concert. And I like was like, all right, I'm not going to check in on them. I'm going to trust them. Everything's going to be fine. It's totally great. And the next day, they were coming up, and I got Brandon when he got home, and I was like, so how did it go? Because I knew his dad would kind of fill him in on, how everything went. And he's like, well, the girls woke up at 4 a.m. and my father-in-law doesn't know, like, just put them back down. They'll both go back down if you let them, but he thought they were awake. So he kept him up. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. I said, and what time did my parents get up? Because they're at my parents' house, all of them. And he was like, well, and I was like, just tell me. He's like, they got up at 10. I said, so you mean to tell me that Tom had the girls by himself for 6 hours because my parents stayed in bed? My parents could stay in bed until noon. Like, they're crazy. Wow. Like, they sleep forever. And I was like, I was so mad because it's like, that's embarrassing, right? Like, first of all, you guys were all supposed to group collectively watch them together. Like, it's a lot to have that two, Hannah's just, going to be 2.5 in a little bit. And Aubrey is 6 months. Like, that's a lot for one person to balance. Hannah does not listen. Hannah is going to do what Hannah wants to do. And luckily Aubrey's not moving, because if she were moving, man, that would be impossible. But I was like, I have to get to the point where I like accept my parents for who they are, because that's just how they're always going to be. But it stinks. And it really frustrates me that that's what they did to him. So my low is like, the more and more I'm starting to realize, like, I love my parents, but they aren't what I had expected in grandparents. And I have to just move past that. So anyway, it's not that bad of a low, but it's also like, whatever. Shout out to my father-in-law, who's amazing.
Yeah.
I know that 4 a.m. that's early. 4:30. No thanks.
Yeah, 4 a.m. and then to not get help until 10. And he said, of course, Hannah got, like, she's potty training and it's not going well. And it had been going well, and then she regressed. But he said that she had an accident. She pooped. Oh. And she stepped in it, and then she was freaking out that it was between her toes. And he was like, he was holding Aubrey and was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? If she starts walking around, the poop's going to be all over the floor.
If I was him, I'd be knocking on your parents' door like, somebody help.
But I would have, well, I mean, we'll go into that. We can go into that story. I ran into my dad's room on Sunday morning and just started lighting him up because it was 11 a.m. and he wasn't up yet to help. Not that he really helps anyways, but because he had been playing a game with Hannah on playing chicken on getting her to go to bed. He was like, you can stay up as late as you want. You just have to stand on the wall. You can't sit down and you can't talk. And so he let her stay up as late as she wanted. And she got up at 5 like she does. And he didn't get up to help her, even though he said he was going to get up if she woke up that early. So I went in, he was dead asleep, and I just started yelling at him. I sound like a great person, I know. But I was like, get up. If you're going to play this game with my daughter, you get up. Yeah. So if I were Tom, I would have gone in with my poopy child and sat him on their bed and said, you take care of this. So a little angsty over here. Sorry.
Well, I know you feel like your parents aren't the grandparents that you hope they'd be, but maybe they'll be great grandparents when the girls are teenagers and they want to sleep in until 10 or 11 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's what I think both of my parents just genuinely want them to be self-sufficient and like figure it all out, right? Like yet. It's just like, that's just not how that helps. That's not how that works, right. So yeah, little frustrating, but whatever. So yeah.
Well, Michaela, how about you?
Oh, my week isn't that exciting. I guess my lows, I've been dealing with a allergic reaction for like a week that has totally broken out my face and my neck, and it's just been miserable. And I usually can figure out what caused it, but I've been kind of at a loss for this one, but it's getting better. So that's good. We did a barbecue out at my mom's house this weekend, and my brother-in-law's mom was also there, and she was so concerned about me. She kept looking at me every like 30 minutes, and I'm like, Barbara, it's not going to change. It's been like this for a week. I'm
She's the
okay.
sweetest lady, though.
She's so sweet. So that's been kind of a bummer, but it's getting better. So I'm happy about that. And I'm home all week.
Oh,
Yay!
that's good.
So
Yeah, no travel.
no travel this week, which is awesome. And the weather's nice. So it's been nice to be able to actually spend some time outside. And we took the quad out for the first time this year. We did that this weekend. So that was really nice. But yeah, no poop toes.
God.
All right. Well, Holly, how about you?
Okay, I'm gonna say my high is probably just that the weather here has been amazing all week. So we've been at the pool a lot, which is nice. Finley really likes the pool this year. Last year he was 2.5 last year this time, and he just like was, and we were really in the thick of things. So he wasn't like super into the pool or comfortable, but this year he's like really enjoying it. So that's fun. Um, and my low is that we were all sick last week. And because of that, we're now kind of dealing with a flare up of symptoms with him. So that's not fun at all. So yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. The pool's
Yeah.
fun. By the way, here is Wilmington, North Carolina, right? Is that where? Nice.
Yes. So we're at the beach. So yeah, we have good weather.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always thought I wanted to live there or somewhere in the like in the Carolinas, whether that was north or south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always wanted to live at the beach. I was never before like in a position where I could make that happen. And then we just were like we knew we didn't want to be where we were. And I was like, let's move to the beach. So yeah, I love it here. I really do. Wilmington's a good place to live if anybody wants to,
Yeah,
you
to
know.
move there. I see your pictures. I'm like, oh, I could definitely like
It really is such a nice place. My only thing that I complain about here is that we don't have people here that we know, like we don't have like a support system. So that sucks.
How long have you been there?
Like a year and a half. So like we have we know like a few people that we knew when we moved down here, but not like no family, not, just not as much of a like support system as I would like. But, like if I could make everybody move here, I would. Like I would just make everybody come to us.
that's tough.
Yeah.
One more thing I was going to say about Wilmington. The last time I was there, I went to the USS North Carolina, the boat. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's all I really remember about that.
There's so much good stuff to do here that like you don't even realize. Like I visited before, but until I lived here, I didn't realize like there's a lot to do here. Like there's a lot of fun stuff to do here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Okay, so we live in Wilmington, North Carolina. We moved here because we love the beach, and Finley loves the beach. That was a big, big part of us moving here. So I stay at home with him, and I have since the beginning. And I also am a content creator, which I just fell into that, which we can talk about that later. It wasn't something I like set out to do. It just happened. So yeah, I stay at home with Finley, and Zach, my husband, works at the post office. But another high though, he for the week, if I can do 2 highs for the week, he had an interview, and hopefully he's getting a work from home position with much better hours because
Ooh.
they work him to death there, and it's just not ideal for us. Like he didn't get home till 8:30 last night.
Oh, man.
That's not okay.
No, but that's awesome. I hope that he gets it.
Yeah.
Our father-in-law, McKellen, he retired from the post office. And
Mhm.
that's one thing that my husband will say is like Sundays were their family days because that's like the only day he was home.
Yes.
So,
And that's just like, yeah, not ideal if you have a family, but
yeah,
you know.
for sure. Well, fingers crossed that he gets it. So,
So
yeah. All right. Oh, did you always know you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, or is that something that's kind of happened? Or
I would say, yeah, I definitely always knew I wanted to. I will say, I think I had in my head, obviously things have changed so drastically for us since like the beginning. I definitely knew like I'd be a stay-at-home mom from like, ages like 0 to 3 or 0 to 4. And then I kind of thought it'd be like preschool and all this. And I've changed my like feelings on that a lot. Like I feel like we're definitely going to homeschool. I'm probably going to be a stay-at-home mom for ever and ever until the end of time. Like I don't want to go back to work now.
I feel that 100%. That's awesome.
How did you know, or when did you know that you wanted to homeschool?
It's always been something that was like on my radar. I mean, public school is just, it wasn't great when we were there, like 20 years ago or whatever it's been. It's been a while. But now I'm just like, I don't know. I'm terrified to send my kid to public school. And then our situation now, I couldn't. He would not thrive in that environment. So
How old is he?
3.5. So we're not like at that point yet anyway, but
No.
I don't think it's something that would be good for him.
Do you have a background in education at all, or
No.
did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I did really well in school. And
okay,
like
good.
Back in the day, like when I was in college, I substitute taught some.
Oh, nice.
Like I'm capable of doing it. It's not something that I like knew I was always going to do or anything, because it's a lot. Like I feel like homeschooling is a lot of work, like a lot of work.
Absolutely. But there's so much curriculum out there now too, and makes it so easy.
That's what I'm saying. There's so much support now. Like, yeah. And if it's what's best for my kid, that's what I'm going to do.
I didn't mean for that to sound judgmental. I tell Danielle all the time, I have no idea how you guys stay at home. It is the hardest thing. Like weekends are like, I'm like, when does daycare start? Like, can I bring you at 6:30 tomorrow morning? Like, this is so hard.
I have done the, work 40 hours a week, full-time job thing. And I've done this. And this is harder 10 times out of 10, like 100%. Always. Yes, it is. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you don't get any breaks. I mean, y'all know I was in the group chat with these girls yesterday, and I'm like, I'm sick and I don't feel good. And Ryan went to work and Weston's crying, and I was just having a really tough day. But Ryan did go to work, and they're like, there's not a whole lot going on. You can go home. So he was able to come home and watch Weston and like relax a little, but it's hard.
No, you don't get breaks. Like you don't even get a bathroom break to yourself. Like you don't get any breaks. I tell Zach, I'm like, you don't even realize some of the breaks you get. Like just driving from home to work is a break. Like I would love that. I don't even drive in the car by myself. Like,
yeah,
there's no breaks ever.
No,
but
no. I feel that 100%. Like I love it and wouldn't change it for the world. But some days it's like, this is hard. And especially when you don't, have support of like family or friends around either. Because I live like 2,000 miles from like both families. Like there's nobody here. So it's hard. So kudos to you for doing it. And especially with like everything that's going on too, which we're going to kind of start to talk about. So before we get started, I did want to say for listeners that we are not doctors, and these are just our experiences. And so if you ever have questions, please talk to your doctor, your physician, because we're just having a conversation. So when I was looking, I saw on your Instagram that you were talking about PANS and pandas, and I was like, I've never heard of this. And you were talking about mold exposure and all the things. If you just want to start off, kind of tell us your story and how. First, do you want to start off with telling us what PANS and pandas is, or to your knowledge, like?
I can kind of like the definition.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so PANS stands for, and I wrote it down so I made sure I said it correctly, Pediatric Acute-onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. So basically, that sounds very complicated, which is why I wrote it down. So it's a clinical diagnosis. So there's no test to say, hey, you have PANS. It's a diagnosis that they make based off of, do you fit the symptoms, pretty much. So it's like a sudden onset of neurological symptoms, like behavioral regression, OCD type symptoms, separation anxiety. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can, I wrote that down too, like stuff like that I can definitely talk more about. But basically, it's triggered by something that would trigger your immune system. So that can be like illnesses. It can be environmental triggers like mold, which that was for us what the trigger was. Immunizations. Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of different things that can trigger. I know that's like one of those things that's touchy for some, but that's one of the triggers. Yeah. So like COVID, there was an uptick of PANS after COVID because it's a virus that triggers the immune system. And basically, so what happens is your immune system is triggered and then it's like confused and it attacks the healthy cells in your brain, in their brain, child. And that causes inflammation. And that inflammation is what leads to a lot of the symptoms. So like the OCD symptoms and all of those things, it's brain inflammation. But it's showing up as, all of these different symptoms.
Interesting.
It's complicated and there's so many layers to it. And it's still misunderstood by even the medical community. Like if you're talking to a mainstream doctor, a lot of them are not educated on it or don't believe that it's real even. So it's a newer thing.
So you said it's acute onset, right? That's what the A stands
Yes.
for. So I know that you're
Yes.
going to get into your son's story, but for him, I mean, did it just like come on all of a sudden out of nowhere, or did it seem like it was kind of progressive?
Like looking back, I feel like there was a slower progression than I realized, but for the most part, it happened over a 2-week span for us.
Wow.
Where and I mean, for some kids, it is literally overnight.
Wow.
Like, I mean, there's so many stories out there. I mean, if you look, it's not something a lot of people have heard of, but if you actually look, there's tons of stories. There's tons of cases. It's like 1 in 200 kids now have PANS or PANDAS, but it gets misdiagnosed a lot too. So that's an issue because of, it presents as like OCD, or like a lot of kids that have PANS or PANDAS have tics and they'll get diagnosed with Tourette's or ADHD because of that, like the behavioral aspect of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Now that you've said the definition, I want to know everything, like how you knew this was happening. And
yeah, so start from the beginning and we'll ask questions as we go.
So we moved to Wilmington. Well, technically we moved to Holly Ridge, which is like outside of Wilmington. When we first moved down here, that's where we were, and we bought a house. Before this happened, we were there about, I guess, 5 months before it happened. And it was just like over the course of a couple of weeks, he went from like everything was, normal. I hate to use the word normal, but normal, to like he was having these meltdowns that we're not talking about like a tantrum or like a normal terrible 2 type of thing, which is what I was told, by doctors when I was trying to tell them what was going on. They're like, oh, he's 2. And I'm like, I'm telling you, this is not that. He was being triggered by like everything. Like I would let the dog out in the morning and he would just have a full on like breakdown, crying. He'd be curled up in, it's horrible. Like talking about it now, like my heart like physically hurts when I talk about it. I mean, he would just be completely freaking out beside himself, like curl up in a ball crying. And it would last an hour. It wasn't like, I didn't get my way. I didn't get that toy. I'm throwing a fit. It was so different than that. And I knew like pretty much like right away, I was like, something's not right here. Like this is not, and it wasn't normal for him because he was always a very like sweet and calm child. So it was just like, what is happening? So like the meltdowns were the first thing that I really like noticed. And then just over the course of the next like couple of weeks, everything regressed. Like behaviorally, he regressed. He lost a lot of his speech. He was getting confused, like things that he like knew, like up and down, like he would mix up and down, or it was, I don't know, it was scary because I'm like, what is happening to my child? He didn't recognize the one little girl that we know down here that was down here when we moved down here, and he's known her. It's like his little best friend. He used to ask for her, daily to see her. He did not know who she was. Like if you showed him a picture, he didn't know who she was. It was scary.
How old was he when all these symptoms started?
2.5. So
Okay.
it's exactly a year ago, basically. So yeah, so at that point I'm like, what is happening? We went to the pediatrician first, and she's like, she just gaslit me, basically. Honestly, she's like, he's 2, that's normal. This is normal. And then what really like broke it was he completely stopped eating and drinking by mouth, would not eat or drink anything. And I mean nothing. And he was always a bit of a picky eater, but it was like he wouldn't even eat things that he normally would eat. Gosh, thinking back to that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a lot.
It was literally the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. Like, it was absolutely horrible. It was horrible. I just can't even put it into words. And I think I've like blocked out a lot of that part of it because it was so like, it was traumatic. It was so traumatic.
Yeah.
And we were just like floundering. We didn't know what to do. Like, we did not know what was happening. But then when he stopped eating and drinking, obviously it's like, well, this can't go on. So we ended up in the children's hospital here. We were there for a week initially.
About how long after that initial pediatric appointment did you guys end up in the hospital? Do you remember? Like, was it pretty soon?
3 days.
Or? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like
really
3
quick.
days. Because even we went there on a Friday, the pediatrician on a Friday. And at that point he was already like restricting what he was eating. And I was telling her, I'm like, this morning all he ate was like, it was like literally like one bite of eggs and like 2 blueberries. And she's like, that's great. And I'm like, no, it's not great. Like, it's not. And then it just very, very quickly went like completely downhill.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I'm not waiting. I think it might not have even been 3 days because I think it was a Sunday. And I was like, I'm not waiting until tomorrow. Like, I'm not waiting because I knew it would be no help anyway. So we just went because, I mean, he wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking. And of course I was very, very concerned about that. But watching the behavioral things that were happening scared me more because I just realized like something really like serious is happening here. I don't know what it is at all, but something's happening. My child is literally a different child than he was like 2 weeks ago.
That's wild. And I hate when like physicians don't. I feel like everyone should listen to your mother intuition, and I hate when they just brush it off like it's normal, it's fine.
Yeah, this whole experience has changed my view on that a lot. Like, a lot. I couldn't be more different than I was a year ago. Yeah, because even when we get to the hospital and I'm, telling them everything that's happening, and of course the eating is an issue, but also like I'm telling them all these other things that are happening. Like, and at this point he wasn't making any more eye contact at all. Like, he wouldn't even look at me. I don't even know. Like, I can't even put it into words. It was horrible. And I was like, at that point already staying up like all night, every night, like trying to figure out, I was like on my phone literally all night. And Zach's like, you have got to sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I'm like, what is happening?
Were you Googling at this point? Like, coming up with ideas?
Oh my gosh. I was Googling like crazy. I went down every rabbit hole you could possibly think of.
Was this one of them?
No, it was not.
Okay.
It was not. At the beginning, it was not. Like, of course, the only thing, no. So what ended up getting me there, and this is why I even decided to make myself talk about this as much as I did not want to, was finding another mom on Instagram who had been through something similar. And it was like, she was like, it sounds like PANS. My son had PANS. That sounds exactly like PANS. And once I looked it up and saw, like, he checks like literally every box, like it was a perfect fit. But the only thing I didn't understand was when I read it, it was like, it had to be triggered by something like an illness or this or that. And I'm like, but he hasn't been sick and, whatever. And she's like, have you checked your house for mold? And I'm thinking, no, like, we just moved here. It's like a 4-year-old house, there's no signs of mold. But anyways, we ended up doing the mold test because we didn't have any other answers. There was, and it came back positive for 10 different types of mold. Yep.
Whoa.
And it was in our and it was in our HVAC. So it was literally, and him and I stay at home. And it had been all winter long. So we were in that house, breathing that air all day, every day.
Wow. I just got chills. Like, that's so upsetting.
Terrible. It was, and
Were
like,
you
I
sick
didn't
at
know
all?
it at the time. Yes, but I didn't know at the time, like, I was very, very, I was so tired. I was just like, had a lot of brain fog, but all of these things brushed off as like, well, I have a 2.5-year-old. Like, I don't get enough sleep. We just moved. Like looking back, I realized how much it really was affecting me. And especially once we got out of it and started to, not be in that environment, I started to realize more like how much it was like affecting me too. So yeah, it's crazy.
So pick back up at the hospital and how that all went.
Yes. So they did they did like an x-ray. They're like, he's constipated, which he was. Like, that's always been an issue for us too. But they're like, yeah, we're just gonna like, do like the clean out. They're like, we do this all the time. Like, we're gonna clean him out, and he'll be good. He'll eat again. Like, they'd be like, you'd be surprised like how much, being constipated can affect their mood and all this stuff. And I'm like, I already knew. I'm like, this is not all that this is. Like, like you're a mom, y'all are moms. If something was wrong with your child, like really wrong, you would know it. Like, you would feel that. And I just knew. And I was like begging these doctors. I mean, the amount of time I spent crying and begging, like just trying to get somebody to like help us, like help me figure out what's going on. That's your job, right? And they just, they didn't. They were no help, if I'm being honest. So they did it. They cleaned him out. He still would not eat anything. He was still the same. I mean, there was a point where he was literally curled up in a ball. The sinks in the hospital, how they're like empty underneath in your hospital room. He was in the corner, like would not let anybody come near him, would not let anybody touch him, and they're like acting like that this is just fine. And I'm like, this is not fine, guys. Like, this is really not okay. But yeah, I mean, they kept us, we stayed a week. They're like, if he doesn't start eating, in the next however many, like 2 days, we'll do the feeding tube and send you on your way, basically. I mean, that's what they did.
Wow.
So we left that first week with, he had an NG tube, which that's the tube that goes through the nose and down. And that's supposed to be like a temporary thing, basically. Like, I can't remember how long, I think a month maybe is the most that's supposed to be for. They were convinced that like, they did refer us to feeding therapy, and they were convinced that like we were going to be good after that. Everything was fine. And I was like, this isn't fine. It's not going to be fine. So we ended up back, it wasn't that much later, after the GI specialist agreed with me, like, this is not going to be something that's going to be turned around in a couple weeks. We need to just go ahead and do the surgery for him to have a G tube. Obviously, no one wants their child to have to go through that. But at that point, I was like, can we just please just do it? Because it was miserable. He had ripped it out. We had to like rush to a doctor's office and have them. And when they put that in, like they just shove it down their nose and down into their, like, it was traumatizing.
Yeah.
It was very traumatizing. And I already at that
Wait, did you watch that?
Yeah, we had to hold him down. Physically.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, I could cry talking about
it.
We
cry all the time on here, so
you're getting me all worked up talking about
it was
this.
I'm getting worked up talking about it. I literally, I don't talk about the beginning very often because like it really was. I mean, I have PTSD. I'm not even kidding. It was horrible. I mean, for Zach and I both. I mean, we had to physically hold him down while this nurse like shoved it and like, oh God, it was horrible. It was horrible. And that's why I was like, just can we please just get the G tube so we can just move forward with whatever. And at this point, I was researching like crazy. Like I was researching. I didn't know yet. I still hadn't figured out yet exactly like what was going on. But I had a few things like on my radar, and I had made the decision like we have to change his diet. Like I knew like that we had to do some like foundational things, and that's as far as I had gotten. But I knew I wanted to do that, and I was like, if he has a G tube, I can make the feeds myself. That way I can control what is going into his body, because the stuff that they give you it's not good. It's not good stuff. Like, not for the type of healing that I knew already at that point that he needed. I was like, I can't put stuff in him that's like got all these ingredients that I know are bad. They're bad.
Right.
So I was like, let's do it. Let's get the G tube, and I can start this, journey with or without the help of, mainstream doctors, because they were not for what I was putting out there. So I was just like, whatever, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. We'll be like, you can help with this side of things and I'll kind of figure this out as I go, which was very difficult. But so yeah, so we went back to the hospital. They did the surgery. That was also very stressful to send your child away, and the anesthesia at that point. I'm somebody who has very high anxiety anyway. So especially when it comes to health, any health situation with myself, with my child, like I have health anxiety so bad. And I spiral. I think of worst case scenarios. And I was just a disaster. I was a disaster. But yeah, so they got it done. He was fine. And at that point it was like, okay, now what are we doing? Like at home, what are we doing? So all of that actually happened before I had that conversation with the mom and did the mold test. At this point, we still had no idea what was going on. No clue. So we're still in that house. Like that's the house we went home to. And it was horrible still. And at this point, he was literally waking up every 20 or 30 minutes all night long. Constantly. It was miserable. And that's that's a big sign that you're living in mold, is that having really disrupted sleep. It's one of the big things. So it was just it was horrible. But that's when I came across that mom, and she was like, have you tested your house? And we did. And yeah, the day that we got that test back, I was like, we're not staying here another night. We are out of here. I'm not keeping him here. And at this point it was June. So 2 months had passed before all of this happened. And June in Wilmington, there's not exactly a ton of places available to stay. It's
vacation destination.
Yeah, there was literally one. There was one Airbnb available, and it was available for it was 2 days. So we went there for 2 days, and then it was like, what are we doing? And we ended up deciding, okay, we're gonna go to visit Zach's family for a little bit, just get an Airbnb there, figure out our next move. And at this point, we're already doing a very strict diet for ourselves and him. And so everything had to be cooked from scratch. Everything's organic, pasture raised, all this stuff. And that in and of itself is hard to do. And then we're doing it on the move. We're
Yeah, especially I know he's from Cana, right? I'm up the hill, up the mountain, but it's hard to find really good quality food in that area.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we went from that one Airbnb in Wilmington, then we went the Airbnb that we found to stay in I think it was in Fancy Gap is where it was. And as soon as we got there, we got there late at night, and there was a thunderstorm and there was no power.
Oh no.
There was zero power. And we're talking about, we're back in the woods. We're tired. We had just, there was nowhere else to go. I guess it's just peak season everywhere at that point. You can't find somewhere last minute to stay. We had to stay there one night with no power. And then they moved us to another Airbnb that they owned. I don't know. That day, Zach was driving to the store, my car, and something, I don't even remember what now, something fell and shattered the whole windshield out of my car. And so we had all of our stuff in the rain. It was the most stressful few weeks of my life. It was so stressful. When I think about it,
that's insane.
When I talk about it now, everything that happened, I remember at that point, laughing. I had cried so much. I think I laughed at that point because I'm just how is this even real? How can this many, it's real life series of unfortunate events. It just kept happening. I'm when do we have to catch a break, right? At some point we have to catch a break. This is insane.
So what was Zach doing for work at that time? Did he have his job he has now?
Yeah. So he was at the post office. When things got really bad, he straight up told them this is what's happening. I have got to take a leave. And thankfully I will say his boss was very understanding. Very
good.
And they were very, very good about everything at the beginning. I mean, they knew how hard of a worker he was, and he wouldn't have done that.
Good.
They were very understanding. Because there's no way, there was just no way he could have been at work at the same time. It was.
Were you were you in, did you say that was a rental, the house you were in, or did you guys own that house?
Owned that house.
Oh no. And they didn't catch that on the inspection report?
Here's the funny thing. I don't know, where are you from? Are you from
Illinois?
Oh, okay. So
I live in Arizona now.
Okay. So in Virginia, where we're from, right? It's part of, and maybe in Illinois too, it's part of the inspection process. A mold inspection is part of the inspection process. In North Carolina, it's not.
Which is wild because it's like humid and damp and like you're at the beach.
Do they just
Right.
assume that you're going to find mold and so they don't even look for it?
Yes, I don't know. But we didn't know that. And the realtor he didn't tell us that, so it's like we had no clue. I'm convinced the people that lived there before us knew, but I can never prove that, and there's nothing I can do about it. But I fully believe they knew.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably costs a lot to clean that out.
Yeah, and I mean, even though technically we could have just, not said anything and sold the house, I would never do that. So we did pay to remediate, and then we sold the house.
So what were you, like, once you got to the Airbnbs, were you going to doctors still down there, or what were you doing as far as that goes?
Yeah, we were still having to, because especially at the beginning, like when they first get a feeding tube and everything, you have to go back and like have things checked. And yeah, it was a lot.
So were you commuting like that long way?
So we only ended up staying back in Virginia for like 2 nights because there was nowhere else to go. There was literally not an Airbnb available. So we're like, okay, guess we're going back to Wilmington. So we came back to Wilmington and we happened to find another Airbnb that was available for like, I don't remember, some amount of time, like a week maybe. I think it was like exactly a week or 6 nights. And we're like, we have to find somewhere to rent. We have to find an apartment or somewhere to rent like now, because we can't keep staying at Airbnbs. It's ridiculously expensive for one, and it was very inconvenient. So we found a townhome to rent. Oh, and so with mold, especially in our situation, because it was in the HVAC, so it was literally in every room of the house, we did not bring any of our stuff with us. So we started from 0. And I mean, like, and that's another thing, thinking back, I'm like, I cannot believe we did that. But from everything I read, because I was deep diving, I was reading everything. Like, if you take the stuff with you, you're just taking the issue with you, essentially, especially if you're sensitive to mold, which obviously, we have a child who clearly is. So yeah, not one piece of clothing, not one piece of furniture,
Wow.
0. So when we moved into this townhouse, we literally had nothing at all.
Did homeowners insurance cover any of the mold remediation?
Nope. And we tried. We fought it. They didn't cover anything. Yeah.
Wow.
And how long was that process?
To remediate?
Uh-huh.
That part wasn't, I mean, that was easy.
Okay.
But I knew at that point, like, we're not staying there.
Yeah.
When they do the remediation, does it clean all of your stuff too? Or you're just taking the mold out? So, oh my gosh.
So that's why it's like, we're not. And even if you clean, like, there's some things you can clean depending on what they're made of, but anything that's like fabric or a porous surface, it's not going to be truly safe ever again.
Wow.
So
I had no clue. I didn't know that.
I didn't know any of this. I had to learn so much. And like, my capacity for learning at that point was I was like spent. Like, my brain could just barely handle every little thing that was happening. I was like, I'm sleep deprived. I'm just, I don't know. Yeah.
So when you got to the point where you got the mold test, you knew what it was, were you going to the doctors and you're like, listen, I know what this is?
Oh yeah. I told them that we had, like, but they don't listen to that. And I realized pretty quickly, like, I'm not going to get help on this front. And at that point, I had even done a couple of tests for him on my own, like, ordered them. Like, there's a test called an OAT test. It's an organic acids test, and it's a urine test. And that's something you can order yourself. You can do it at home, send it off, and get the results back. And I just, like, I don't know, I read so much. I don't even know where I was, like, pulling all this information from. So I did a couple of different tests, like, on my own that came back and, showed a bunch of different stuff off the charts. And it stressed me out because I did it without a practitioner to, like, tell me what it means, which was, I don't know what I was thinking at that time. I really have no idea. But when I took it to, these results to like the doctors we were already seeing, or when I brought it up, they had never even heard of the test itself, didn't even know what the test was. So it was just, yeah.
Not helpful. Did you ever find a doctor, like a holistic doctor?
Yeah, we work with somebody. We saw one first who I like just fine, but the practitioner that we're working with now, she specializes in PANS and PANDAS, because her child had PANS, and so I felt like that was going to be the best fit, because it's something that you truly cannot understand if you have not been through it. Like, even as much as I try to like talk about it and explain it, nothing I ever say like does it justice. Like, can it really explain what it's like? It's a whole nother, yeah.
Did you guys ever see a neurologist?
Yeah, we did that too.
And the neurologist, they weren't familiar with it either?
No. The neurologist, literally, when I told him that I had changed his diet as like a first thing that I wanted to do, and that alone, I will say, like, helped. It helped a lot to take out all these like inflammatory foods and things that cause inflammation. Like the food that we eat, a lot of the food that we eat there's things in it that aren't good for our body. So when you're dealing with something that the inflammation is the issue, which with PANS, like that is the issue, you're having brain inflammation, and then you're eating things that are causing more inflammation, like that's going to make symptoms worse. So by removing that, we did see an improvement like pretty quickly. And when I told the neurologist that, he told me it was witchcraft. Like, he laughed in my face. Literally, I wish Zach was in here to talk about this, because I was so angry. I'm like, how is this our medical system? Like, how is this?
Because if it's not medicine or whatever they're trying to push on you, like,
it's not a drug.
It doesn't work.
If there's not a prescription for it, then it's not real.
Right.
And Holly, I also have medical trauma with you on that, and so you're getting me all sorts of fired up here.
Yeah. And the thing is too, is at this point they had already done every test they could do, and they found nothing. I mean, we did an MRI. We went to the hospital a third time just so they could do a EEG. They did a 24-hour EEG. He had to sit there with all those things on his head for 24 hours for them to find nothing.
Wow.
And then laugh at me when I have like an actual answer to the issue. So yeah, I've been very turned off by that. I'm like all the way over here now. So
yeah, I'm there with you too. I feel that. So
yeah, I wish that it wouldn't have taken something so drastic for me to open my eyes to so much. But now that this is what I tell people, because a lot of people, unfortunately, that are in my life are still on the other side of things, and when I talk about things, a lot of people don't want to hear it. And I'm like, I get it to an extent, because there's a lot of stuff, once you know it, like, you can't unknow it, and it changes your views so much. Like, there's so many things that I can't think the same way about anymore, or I can't do anymore, because I'm like, I know too much.
Yeah. And your baby so well, to know that happened like that. No, he's not just a normal 2-year-old going through these things. Like, it had to have been so frustrating. Like, somebody listened to me. Mm-hmm. Somebody listened to me and helped me.
The way that I can't even put into words how frustrated I was with the doctors and everything at that point. I mean, by the end of it, I was angry, and I was not holding back about it either, because I was just so, like, no one was listening to me. I would get so worked up, because when you're in the hospital, the doctor only comes and sees you like once a day for like 10 minutes. The nurses come in, they do their you don't see a doctor but for a few minutes. And every time they'd come in there, I'm like laying it, help us. Like, and they're telling us, well, we're going to send you home. And I'm like, but you haven't done anything. You haven't given me any answers. Like, I want answers. And at this point, like, I had little bits of information that I was trying to understand as a regular person. And I was begging them to help me understand some of the stuff that I felt like I was like onto something. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, that fits. in all these little things. And I was begging someone who supposedly has the knowledge to, make sense of it, to help me. And they're just like, no, that makes no sense. There's no gut brain connection. I'm like, but there is. And like, I know, I don't know. It's just insane.
So then through this whole process, is Finley coming, like recognizing you, making eye contact at any point, like coming back to you?
So yeah, once we made the diet change and we're into that for a little bit, we started to see a little bit. I mean, it was slow at first because, I mean, I just think of how bad of shape he was in. It wasn't like an immediate thing. But just at the beginning, all we did for a while, actually, for maybe 6 months, was like foundational work. We did the diet change. That was a big one. Here was my first like inkling that we were doing the right thing. Literally 3 weeks into the diet change, which at that point we were doing it all through the feeding tube. Nothing. He still wouldn't eat anything by mouth. So, Zach was making, chicken stock and chicken, all that stuff from scratch, doing everything. And, we were putting it in a blender and blending it up. And it was a lot. But a few weeks into that, we were also following the same diet. One, because he was still breastfeeding, which he still is. But at that point, he was still breastfeeding a lot. And I was like, obviously, I have to follow the diet, or because, if I'm eating stuff that he can't have, he's going to get it through the breast milk. And I'm like, if I'm doing it and he's doing it, you're doing it too, Zach. Like, we're in this together, okay? That's the only way we can do this, is if we just all do it. So we're sitting there eating our soup, because the diet that we did is the GAPS diet, which I'm sure nobody's heard of. But there's like an introduction. And at the beginning, like, you start off, it's pretty intense at the beginning. Like, you're basically eating like soup. Like, we ate like only soup for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Literally. But Finley, like, he asked for some of it. And I'm thinking, I like look at Zach and I'm like, he's not going to eat this. Because, I mean, it was like, I don't even remember what was in it at this point. Like meatballs, chicken, vegetables. Like, that's all it was. And he ate it. He was willingly eating it. And I'm like, okay, something is, like, we're onto something, because even before everything happened, he was picky. Like, he wouldn't eat that. He was your typical, mac and cheese and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden he's eating like meatball with liver in it. Like, literally was eating.
Wow.
Yes. And now he'll eat anything, which we're still like, he doesn't eat, like, we don't do dairy, we don't do gluten or anything like that. But like, yeah. It's crazy. He eats a pound of crab legs by himself when we have crab legs.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and I'm
That's incredible.
He never ate like that before. And the only thing that changed was the diet that they all laughed at me about. So,
So I have a couple of points to make. Okay. First, it sounds like Zach is awesome and super supportive. Yes. So sounds like you had a good person by your side through that all.
That's the one thing and I've said this from the get, that was like, I'm like, the only thing that would make this any worse is not having a supportive partner. And thankfully, Zach, I mean, he's just like a good-hearted dude.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to, like, from the beginning, he trusted everything I said, was like, fully believed in anything I felt we needed to do. He was like,
that's
okay,
awesome.
Like, let's do it. I mean, it took both of us, especially at the beginning. It really, I mean, there was a period of time at the beginning where Finley he didn't want to do anything. He didn't play. He just literally laid on me like all day long. Like, he didn't want to do anything. So Zach had to do all of the cooking. He had to pick up a lot of slack at the beginning. A lot.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. And the second point I was going to make is, so Michaela, Leah, and I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, very hippie town, very much like, don't trust anything, like,
they're right.
We go to like natural grocers, and like, I went to natural grocers for the first time the other day. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I went in there and there was like a little boy who had to have been like 4, but like in like a little Tarzan like underwear kind of thing. Like, his parents were like not wearing shoes, and I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
It's very hard. We've started to, like, I'm not really on social media very much for my mental aspect, but like the Danielle started one day in like fluoride toothpaste is really bad. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yep.
And then I went into that deep dive and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay. No fluoride toothpaste for us. Like, you know, like
it is, it's really bad. Yeah. And like, we've just been conditioned to like believe that all these things that we like do and consume are the norm and that they're fine, but they're not fine. Like they're not. That was another big, so like at the beginning, the diet, we changed all of our like household and like personal care products, all of it had to be changed. Like,
do you have a favorite brand of household products?
Yeah, so I order from a couple of different places. I'm trying to think specifically, like what specifically would you be?
No, just because, so my backstory is I went through years of infertility, and in that process, I detoxed everything and changed all of the products in our house and like went through that learning journey as well. And so I'm just always curious as to if there's anything that people choose in particular.
For laundry, I use Mama Suds. I don't know if you've heard of that. That's like
one.
They're a smaller company, but it's the cleanest one that I could find. Like there's like, it's super.
I use Branch Basics for everything. For my soap, my cleaning supply, and my laundry. I did the same thing. I literally threw out all my candles, all my cleaning supply.
Those are a big no. Yeah. No candles. Yeah.
I am so overly sensitive to artificial fragrances now.
You know what? That's funny you say that. So we actually had to go for his follow-up. He has to go every 3 months for his feeding tube because, you know, they get bigger. When kids get bigger, sometimes they have to get a longer tube. And we walked in the room, that like the actual office or whatever. And immediately I was hit with like this. I was like, the smell in here is so strong. I can't take it. Like I can't sit in this room and wait. I opened the door and, you know, they walked in, they went to shut the door. And I was like, I need you to leave that door open. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, you know what it was? It was their gloves. They had lavender scented medical gloves. Oh. And it was the worst chemical. It was just a horrible smell. It gave me a headache instantly. And I said something to her and she's like, you know, okay. Like, I'm telling you, fragrances are bad. If it says fragrance at all, don't buy it.
Right. Mm-hmm. I feel that way too. My dad put this is off topic, but fake fragrance on the Christmas tree when I went home to smell like a Christmas tree because it's fake. It made me sick. I had a headache. I felt nauseous. I literally went and like took them all down, put them in a baggie and threw them outside on the back porch. What? And he got mad. He got so mad. I'm like, Dad, it's making me sick. He's like, you're so sensitive. I'm their sensitive child, but like, it's gross. Like it stinks, but
it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We'll say it's got to be a challenge living there. Like I said, you know, like Flagstaff, you say all of that stuff to these people and they're like, I get it. Like we have a great support system on as natural as you want to get and as clean as you want to get. People support you here. It's wonderful.
It's that's one of the hard parts. And it's hard to find, you know, mom friends that understand but I want Finley to have people, but it's like, it's hard because I don't feel like we are the same as a lot of other people. And, you know, it's like, we're not going to go, I mean, me a year ago, like before all this, I would have gone out and had a drink with you on Friday night, but like, that's not my life anymore. I'm not going to go eat the, you know, crappy food. Like I can't, he can't.
So is he still on a feeding tube?
He still has a feeding tube. Yeah. And so right now he's at like, I'd say like 60%, 40%. He eats like 60% by mouth, 40% we still do through the tube. Honestly, it makes it very easy to do like the supplements and stuff for his protocol because he doesn't have to take them. So it simplifies that for me a lot. And I don't mind that.
What is the rest of his treat? So you figured out this diagnosis through your own research.
Yes. Now
you've found a doctor that supports your theory and so where are you guys now?
So when we first started working with her, she did a lot more testing. She repeated some of the tests that I had done like months and months and months before, which they had all changed obviously at this point because we had changed so much, which is great. But she did additional tests to show other things. And it's crazy the amount of information that some of these tests give you. It's just stuff that like they don't test for this stuff, regular doctors, and it's not even on their radar, and it's all these things that affect us and our health and how we feel. And you said you went through infertility. I know, like, I don't know if you did any of that kind of testing, like, I'm sure you did. Yeah. And some of the stuff you're just like, wow, he had so many things that were like off the charts bad. And
did you do a hair follicle test?
Yeah, we did a heavy metal test. That was one of the tests that I did on my own at the beginning. And I don't even remember now. This has been almost a year ago that I did that one, but there were things that were high. And then she did, and actually I'm working with her for myself too, because she likes to work with both, especially if you have young children, and this is another thing, like, I didn't know any of this, but like our kids really do mirror us so much. Like they're so connected to us in a way that I just did not even understand. And it's crazy because she had us do like some of the same tests, and ours came back. She's like, I see, kids and moms have similarities a lot. She said she's never seen two mirror each other so much as ours did. Like we had the same, so, we have different, like bacteria in your stomach and everything. It's like some are good, some are bad. And there's like one, I don't remember off the top of my head, because again, I'm just a regular person, but there's a certain thing that like him and I both it's like something that you need. And him and I both had none, like zero. And then there's something else. It's like an opportunistic thing, like a bad thing. It's like both of us are like off the charts. Like it's just crazy. But yeah, so she did a lot of testing, and he and me too are both on protocols that are very like specific to what she found. So it's not, and that's another thing with like pandas in general. There's not a one size fits all approach, like at all, not even close. Like every kid is different. I mean, people have different triggers. Some kids can handle like certain things that other kids can't, like supplement wise. It's a lot of just kind of trial and error, to be honest.
So is the speculation that the mold is what kicked this all off, or is there some inkling that maybe stuff happened before the mold?
Definitely there was susceptibility. He was susceptible to, does that make sense? Like, because some kids can live in that and that not happen. There's kids that live in mold and that doesn't happen to them, right? Like they might have some symptoms, but it doesn't turn into this. But what we definitely like realized and discovered through all this is like there was gut issues that were there from the beginning, and that there is such a strong gut-brain connection. That is real. And he was susceptible. And it's just, of course, had I known what I know now way back when, there's a lot of things that I would have done differently. But I mean, I think it's just, that was the tipping point. It's like we had gut issues, and we had, even when he was a baby, he had acid reflux, and they had him on a PPI for like a year and a half. Well, now I know that is not okay, like at all. It kills all the acid in your stomach, which you need, to do important things.
That's a long time.
And it was like a more than an adult dose.
Wow.
It makes me, like, when I think about that now, it like makes me physically feel sick because I didn't know. I'm doing what the
doctor says, right? Because doctor knows best.
Exactly.
I think, and that's what I was going to say. I think we grew up so much in the era of you trust the doctors, you trust the doctors, you trust the doctors. And now that we're having kids and we're stepping up and we're saying, they don't know a lot. Like, I'll tell you, our pediatrician is quick to prescribe because that's what they think parents want.
Well,
they're just going to give you drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly,
yeah.
I've had my doctor Google stuff right in front of me. I'm like,
same all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just a lot, I think, that led up to it, but that was definitely the tipping point. It's like his bucket was just like here, and then it just spilled over, and yeah, unfortunately. So it's a lot to unravel, and that's kind of what the practitioner, she's like, this isn't one dimensional for him. Like there's a lot of layers here that all have to be addressed, and that's the thing is like we have to. There's just a lot. There's a lot that has to be addressed before we can hopefully get to a point where it's like we're on the other side of it.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, are you guys in a spot right now that you're happy with where you're at, or you're happy because it's better than it was, but this isn't the end goal?
Oh, it's definitely not the end goal. Definitely not.
Okay.
We're nowhere close to the end goal.
Oh, wow.
And this is what I try to remind myself when things are difficult, because right now he is in a flare. It hasn't been a great couple of days at all, to be completely honest. I just try to remember that, like, we still, even when things are bad, like they are right now, they're not great, we're still way better than we were a year ago when this all happened. So it's like a lot of progress has been made, but no, yeah, there's still so much that needs to be done. And like, we just have a long way to go. And that's the thing. I mean, and you'll see this the more, if you look into it, it's a long game basically. And that's what I've been told over and over and over. And it's like at the beginning, I was kind of like, I think I was naive. I think I really was like, I believed, and I think part of me needed to believe that if we do all this in a year, it'll be better, right? Like, how could it not be? We're doing so much. It has to be better. And it is better, but it's not what I thought. And it's difficult. It's very difficult.
So the lady that you're working with now, does she have an end game goal for you?
I mean, there's no time frame, if that's what
no, but like
So after the initial like meeting with her Zoom call, because she's not local, obviously we don't have that kind of doctor locally. I wish we did, but we don't. So yeah, she laid it all out. Like the first phase is like kind of more basic, like getting the body into balance, because there's a lot of things. He's depleted of a lot of like vitamins and minerals, things that your body needs to be able to like function and detox the way you want it to. So like that was first and foremost. And actually I just met with her a few days ago, and we're kind of moving into the detox part of it. And I'm nervous about that, to be honest, where we're kind of doing some targeted detox, working on the mold and things. But it's just a lot. And one of the things you'll hear, and this is with any like healing, if you talk to a holistic person, healing's not linear. Like I've heard that 5 million times, and it's true, but when you're in the thick of it, you're just like, but why can't it be linear? Because we'll have like, things will be going in a good direction, and I'm finally like, oh, okay, I can breathe. Like because when it's bad, it's so much worse than I just can't explain it. And I will never put him out, like put some of the bad stuff out there like that, because that's not fair to him. But yeah, when it's really bad, it's really bad. It's bad. And you're almost like afraid to get comfortable when it's good, because it's like this, and then it's like, oh, just kidding. Like, it's like that. It is.
Is there any way for you to kind of predict like when he's going to have a flare?
I mean, you can't predict it. Like, you can, based off of like, okay, he was sick last week, so I kind of had a feeling like this is going to happen, because basically anything that triggers an immune response can trigger a flare up, right? Wow. So sickness is a big thing, but that's not the only thing. Like, it can literally be stress. It can be even like a short, I mean, yeah, like, so kids with PANS, another big thing, like any kind of dental work or like losing a tooth can trigger a flare up. Like,
wow.
There's endless things that can that's the problem, is like you're never going to be able to prevent all of the things.
Holly, do you know what percentage of the population has PANS?
I think it's like 1 in 200 kids is the last thing that I saw, but honestly it's probably more, because it gets misdiagnosed so much. But yeah, it's like 1 in 200.
Is he able to go and do like play dates and stuff? Are you worried about exposure to germs and stuff?
No,
how does that work?
I don't worry about that anymore. I mean, I can't do that. It's like I can't obsess over every little thing, or then he won't be living his life. So it's finding that balance. For a long time, I think shied away from doing stuff like that, because it's hard to explain to, a stranger, like, well, this is the situation. This is why he may do this or this. It's like, because there are still times where you can tell the difference between him and someone a kid who's not going through that. There's behaviors that not everybody picks up on, and it kind of depends on how well he's doing at the time. Is he in a flare? Is he not in a flare? But, if he does something, I feel the need to be like, hey, this is what's happening. But then it's like, you know, it's awkward. It's hard. It's like, I don't know how to navigate that, but I've been pushing myself, and I'm not the most like, it's hard to like make friends like randomly. Like, I don't know. I struggle with that. Like, how do you do that? It's just, you know, I'm kind of awkward.
Same. It's we should
So
live
am I.
closer. We're like the same
Yeah.
person.
When you figure it out, let us know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
tough.
I think like I shied away from that. Part of it was because of me too, just because I'm like an introvert at heart. Like you know, I just really am. So I've been trying to push myself lately for his benefit, and I like signed him up for this weekly music class, and I'm trying to like, yeah,
We
I'm
love
trying to
music
like
class.
do the things, but like it's not, stuff like that takes so much out of me, just like mentally and emotionally, because I'm like worried about him, and I'm,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I'm just trying to make it happen, even though I'm uncomfortable. I'm just trying to do what's best for him, and that's all. I mean, that's always my, that's it. That's all I care. It's not all I care about, but it is all I care about. Like, I will push my feelings and everything aside. You know, I've had people tell me, like, especially at the beginning when we were doing this diet, and it was like super strict at the beginning, and you know, I'd have friends be like, I could never do that, and I'm like, I hope that if it was your kid though, you would feel differently. You know, like,
Right.
I will do anything for him. Was I miserable? Yeah. I I can remember literally when we were driving back from the Airbnb and we were coming back to Wilmington from the one in Virginia, crying my eyes out because I couldn't have coffee. Like, literally, because it's, I mean, I bawled my eyes out, y'all. Like, I was like emotionally unstable at that point. But like, I was not going to have coffee just because it would make me happy, when I knew that that was like, I'm not going to do anything that's not going to, like, that's going to hurt him, even if it benefits me. Like, that's just, and I'm sorry if you do any less than that for your child, then I don't know what to say about that. That's just where I'm at.
That's awesome.
So how long do they anticipate that he will have the feeding tube?
So that's, I mean, the way that they'll say it is that he has to be eating 100% by mouth for like, I don't remember the time frame they put on it, a couple months or something.
Okay.
But to be completely honest with you, that's like way down here on my list
Yeah.
of things that I'm worried about or care about, because that can be dealt with at any point, right? Like, that's, kids, people have feeding tubes for 10 years, get them out, and it doesn't change anything. It doesn't, there's not like this window. Whereas what everything else that we're dealing with, it's like, it has to be dealt with now.
Okay.
Like, you can't, you know, the longer you put stuff like that off, there's like this window where it's kind of, you have the best chance of getting through it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where all my focus is, to be completely honest. But the thing is he's eating so well, and that would have never happened if all we did was go to feeding therapy and shove Cheerios at him, which is what they did at feeding therapy. That's
Oh
literally,
yeah, Cheerios are such a good choice.
well, that's what they do. And so that's what I'm just like, after that I was like, I can't do this. I have to just make these decisions for myself. Like, we've got to take this into our own hands. If we just follow blindly what they're telling us to do, he will not be any better, you know, a year from now than he is now. I fully believe that. If we would have done what they said versus what we've done, I think he'd be in a worse place than he probably was even then.
I mean, Holly, you're like listening to you, it's so inspirational of like, hey, you know something's wrong with your kid, like, fight.
Yep.
Fight for it, and don't just keep letting people be like, oh, it's normal,
Yep.
it's normal, right? Because it's like, you know, I know I was bashing my parents in the beginning, but like talking to my Midwesterner family, like, it's like, yeah, mac and cheese and chicken nuggets, that's all we eat, and when your kids come stay with me, that's what they're gonna eat, and they're gonna eat Kraft singles, and they're gonna eat all that junk. And I'm like, listen, I understand that that's what you guys know and you understand, but please respect me for my, you know, wanting my kids to be healthy. Like, very small scale, and I'm not even putting you on the same level, but my kids have terrible eczema, and I know they have flares.
It's connected to your gut, though. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Yep. It is.
And it is amazing.
Yeah, the diet that we're doing, that's one of the things I've seen a million people do it was for eczema.
We have terrible eczema, and it was interesting. Like, last year, we took our daughter, at the time she was 1.5 years, to France, and we were like, all right, let's just, you know, we're gonna let her eat whatever. She was clear as a whistle. Like that, there was not a spot on her. There was no, and we were like,
actually real food.
it's pure food. And I literally said to my husband, I was like, okay, I'm ready to move. He was like, I mean, that's extreme. I said, look how good her skin is though. And it looks,
I mean, there's people who, they eat the food here and they're like, they have gluten intolerance or whatever. And then they can go to Italy and eat a bowl of pasta and they're fine. Why is that? It's like, why is that?
We went to Ireland a couple years ago, and there's so much of our food that just really upsets my stomach. And I know exactly. Cream-based soups, for example. I cannot eat them here. We went to Ireland, and I had a seafood chowder, and I'm like, I'm going to be wrecked for like 2 days. That's just how it's going to be. Totally fine. 100% fine. I think I had that seafood chowder like 2 or 3 more times. No issues.
It's
insane.
The food here, it's unbelievable what we are allowed to like consume and call food here. It's crazy.
I mean, compare the list of ingredients that are banned here versus the ingredients that are banned in European countries.
It's wild.
It's disgusting.
When I went to Australia, everybody from Australia was like, oh my gosh, what are Cheetos like? Are they incredible? They're banned here. And I'm like, there's a reason they're banned, but also like that is wild to think that they look at us like, oh my gosh, you guys just don't care. You put whatever in there and it's bad for you. And it's like, unbelievable.
Like, look how many people are sick. Like, that's the thing too, is I like really have opened my eyes to that. I'm like, wow, it's not normal that this many people are sick. So many kids.
You're riling up my
sorry, I get
my key conspiracy theory here, and we can talk offline about it because I don't know that I should go into that. But,
I would love to.
It's all about that. So Holly, where in this process where you are now and along the journey, did your family jump in? Did they kind of start to subscribe to, your lifestyle changes? Like,
I mean, no one has jumped on this with us, that's for sure. It's extreme to people who don't have a reason to do it. And I get that too, because it's like, if we weren't put in this situation, would I have done that? No, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have like given up coffee and started buying everything organic, like, no, I probably wouldn't have done that. And that's like one of the silver linings. I feel like I like to think about that too, is just like, because I do feel like my health is in a better place now too, because of all of the changes that we made. And like, there's just so many things that I'm like mind blown about. And I don't know if y'all might not want to put this on there, but it's okay. I'm just going to bring it up, even if not. I don't know if any of you know or are familiar with anything, but like parasites are such a thing.
I'm not familiar.
I've seen videos.
Go down that rabbit hole unless you're prepared. But also, if you are prepared, go down that rabbit hole, because like,
I have a friend that's going through parasite treatment right now because she all of a sudden started getting really bad alopecia, just like chunks of hair falling out. And she has gone through like so much on her own to try and figure out what the heck happened. And she, as part of her journey, was doing this like massive parasite cleanse, and the symptoms just from that, it's insane.
Yeah,
I haven't gone down a rabbit hole because I'm afraid to.
Yeah, you got to be ready for it. I'll tell you, you do. You just have to be ready. But like, y'all wouldn't believe some of the medical conditions that are like directly related to parasites. Just saying.
Oh boy.
No, I'm just thinking about the videos I saw of how long just what they look like. I'm like, ugh, that's scary to think
disgusting.
That's in our gut. But
yeah, other countries parasite cleanse regularly from the time they are like children. They do.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a reason for it.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we all need to move, I guess.
I was just gonna say, where are we moving to, you guys? Where are we gonna go? Because I'm going.
Listen, when I lived in Costa Rica, it was the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life.
I believe it.
So does Zach's family like support you guys in this journey? Like, are they really like?
I mean, yes, but they don't live here, so it's just like they support what we're doing, but we don't have anybody that's like involved day to day, because we just don't have anybody that's close enough to be involved day to day.
So the reason I ask that is because
they might think I'm crazy. I don't know. They probably do.
So my in-laws call me the hippie voodoo shit. Like, and so
If they do, they don't say it to my face. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, I know it's extreme. I'm sure people probably think that I'm extreme, but there's nothing too extreme when it's your kid. That's it.
I was just gonna say, like you said, it's for your kid. You do anything for your kid. If I have to do that for my kid, like
Yep.
I'll find a way, because it's heartbreaking to watch them suffer and for them to be
Yeah,
upset.
horrible. I mean, yeah.
I can't even imagine having had him be a loving, normal child and for it to just all go away. Like, I would have been a wreck. Like, I want to cry for you right now, to be like, you essentially lost your son for a while.
Somebody reached to the last time that I spoke about a little bit on Instagram. Somebody reached out to me and she's like, my neighbor's son had this and he was part of a documentary, and the documentary was called like the stolen childhood or something, and it instantly made me feel something, because I'm like, that's what it does. Like, it literally is like, it steals their childhood. It's so unfair. Like, to him mostly, it's unfair to us. I'm not even going to sit here and act like it's not. It is. It's unfair. Like, it sucks. This is not what you envision like parenting as, or like, we wanted to be parents, right? Like, this was on purpose, and you want like all these happy parts of it, and then it's like, this is our reality. And like, it's not that there's never happy moments. There are, but it's hard. Like, there are more hard moments than happy ones currently. I don't think it'll always be that way. Like, I have to believe that like we're doing so much, like it's going to get better. It has to get better.
On a scale of like from where he was before it all turned, like, will he make eye contact with you guys now, or
yeah, like that. Okay. That was one of the first things that came back. After we changed the diet, like that improved. It calmed down a lot just with that thing. But I mean, yeah, there's just still a lot. There's a lot. There's still
lots to come back.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you have people like on Instagram or social media that are going through what you're going through, that you guys kind of have a support system?
Yeah. So, I in touch with anybody like super regularly. Honestly, I don't keep in touch with like anybody super regularly, just because my day-to-day life is very hectic. Like, it really is. Like, with everything with him, it's just a lot more than what like anybody sees. It's a lot. He takes all of my attention and energy, and like, it's hard. Yeah, like, it's just a lot. And then I'm like trying to balance the things that like I have to do, and Zach's at work a lot and I don't have any help, and it's like, honestly, it's hard to keep in contact with anybody. But quite a few people reach out to me, and we had like little conversations about things, and that's nice. It's just nice to know that you're not by yourself, because it can be very, very isolating. Like, that's one of the hardest parts of it, is feeling just so isolated, because you just feel like you're going through this thing that no one around you, first of all, is going through, but most of all, no one understands. Like, and you can't understand. You really can't. I could have never understood this if I wasn't in it. I mean, as much as Zach is involved, he can't even understand like how much it is for me, because I, by default, like, there's a lot that I have to take on that he doesn't have to take on. Like, one of those things being like the sleep thing. Like, Finley sleeps with me, and he wakes up throughout the night still. Not as much as he did, thank God, because that was horrible. But he still wakes up throughout the night. Like, some nights it's like I have a newborn. Like, he's up every 2 hours, and I'm the only one who can get him to go back to sleep. Like, he won't go. I'm the only option. That's it. So it's like, Zach gets to like check out for the night, and I don't. Like, I don't get to do that ever. So it's just, it's isolating, because I'm just like, I'm in this world that no one else is like in. So.
Jeez.
So all that to be said, how did you get into, is it considered influencing? Like I said, I'm not on social media, so I'm sorry.
I still have a hard time saying that about myself. To be honest. you. I say content creator because I don't feel like I'm an influencer. I don't know. It's weird. It's just
Okay.
a weird little thing about it. Okay. So it's kind of funny because I actually was not on social media for like 10 years. Like when me and my high school boyfriend broke up, I was like, I'm from a small town too, right? So I was in college and we broke up, and this is when like Facebook was the thing. And I just was like, I can't see him like move on Facebook. So I deleted my Facebook, and it just stuck for some reason. And I had zero social media from like 21 to like 30. I had nothing, zero. And honestly, I didn't think I would ever get it back because I was just like living my life like off the grid. Like you could Google me and nothing would come up. It was great. But then COVID happened, and I found out I was pregnant the week that COVID was like declared like a thing, whatever it was. Oh, I was unwell. Okay. Like I would sit there and read these stories about people dying, and I would just sob and like,
Oh
it
no.
was horrible.
Oh
Um,
no.
and we took it like very seriously, and like we didn't go a lot of places and see a lot of people. I'm a type 1 diabetic too. So my doctor like scared me, like, you're pregnant and you're diabetic, like, you could die. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Another
Oh,
thing, like
no.
looking back, I'm like, if I knew what I knew
Yeah.
now, I would have been like, okay, sure. But at the time, I had not been like, my eyes hadn't been opened yet. So I was terrified. Anyways, all that to say, I was like, I guess it was probably when he was like 6 months old. I was like, I'm going to make an Instagram. Like, I don't know about this, but I'm going to do it. So like I made it, and, just like followed people from like high school and all that stuff. And I would just post like cute little, like I've always like taken pictures of him, like cute pictures of him, especially when he was a baby. And I had like some random girl reach out to me, and she's like, have you ever worked with like any brands or anything? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remember talking to Zach and being like, is this really a thing? Like, this is, no, no. But I don't know. It just like kind of slowly happened. And then once I actually started to put more effort into it and realized like, oh, you can like actually make money doing this. Like, that's a thing. I need to do this because like I stayed at home anyway. And of course, like, one income is hard these days, y'all. Okay. Like, I'm sure y'all know.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and I'm the kind of person, like, if I put my mind to something, like I can figure it out. So I just like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. And that's what I did. And when everything happened though, like I cold turkey, I was so beside myself that like everything that was happening, I could not be on Instagram. I had to just shut off that part. Like I had tunnel vision about like what we were going through. I could not deal with anything else. So I just like went like gone. I was just gone for like 4 months. And honestly, I didn't want to get back on Instagram because I was like, at some point I'm going to have to say, hey, this is happening. This is what my life is now. Like things have changed. And like, I guess speaking it made it feel more real, like putting it out there. And I don't know. I was like protecting myself for a while. And then it was just kind of like, all right, like I got to get hustling again because, everything we're doing. And that's the thing too, is like, unfortunately, true healing, like when you're actually like addressing root causes and doing all these things and working with holistic practitioners, insurance doesn't cover any of that. None of it. Like that's all out of pocket. So it's like, we need the money. I was just like, I've got to just jump back in. I just have to jump back in. So I just did it, and here we are. So yeah, sometimes it's still hard for me to even, if you knew me in real life, like outside of all this, or like before I ever was on Instagram or anything, I would have been the last person you would ever think would do that, ever.
Wow, that's interesting. Because looking at your Instagram, I'm like, wow, like you seem very outgoing and
It's beautiful.
I'm scrolling through it right now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really well put together.
And that's why I like to always point out, like, Instagram is not real though. It's not. And I have no problem saying that. Like, when you work with companies, they're paying you to make it pretty, right? Like that's what it is. And I can do that. But I'm also going to say, like, when I'm actually speaking, like, this isn't real life. Like sometimes that pretty photo, there was a lot of chaos happening behind that pretty photo. I'm just being honest. So yeah, I mean, but I do it to help support my family. That's it. To help us pay for everything we have to do for him, because this is very expensive, like insanely expensive.
Do a lot of the brands that you work with, are they stuff you guys can actually consume and have, or not necessarily?
So Zach and I have gotten more lenient for ourselves.
Okay.
Now,
Nice.
so like, okay, you'll see the one that I recently posted about, actually I posted it today, I think, with the ice cream. So I made a version of ice cream that Finley could actually have. Obviously he's eating it. I wouldn't let him eat something that he can't actually have. So I have to like, sometimes I have to go about things differently so that they fit into, you know, like I can't just give him the ice cream that came with it. I had to make special ice cream for him.
Sure.
Which to him was the best thing ever. Like, because he doesn't eat stuff like that regularly. So he was like, this is awesome. But like, it's pretty healthy to be ice cream. But yeah.
So you said that you were, nervous to get back on and share how your life had changed. Did you end up sharing that with your broader followership?
Yeah. So at the beginning, I was like just super vague. I was just like, we've been going through a lot, but I'm back. Hey, like didn't address it because I still couldn't. Like I still wasn't ready. And then I think I just not talking about it at some point became harder than talking about it, because it was so much of my life that I'm like, I can't keep posting happy, 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 happy when the reality is so much different than that. Like I have to talk about it, or I'm like, I just had to. And I just remember telling Zach, like, I just feel like I really need to do this, first of all, for myself, but then also I just think about that one mom who was the only reason we figured out what was going on. We would have never known. We would have never known. We would have never known to test for mold. That would have never been on my radar. And no doctor was telling me to test for mold, that's for sure. So I'm just like, I have to talk about it, because even if one person sees this and they're like, oh my gosh, that, like, my kid has those symptoms or whatever, like, why would I not do that? So that's what I did. And every time, I don't talk about it every single day, because honestly, if I did, I would be giving people whiplash, because I have whiplash, because it's so like, because sometimes I'll be like, yeah, things are going really great. And then it's like 2 days later, things are not going great. And I'm like, it's like, I'm almost scared to talk about it because it's so all over the place. But every time I always have like a handful of people reach out to me and be like, hey, like I've been through this with my kid, or, ask me questions. They're like, I think my son might have this or whatever, so I'm just like, and I'm more than happy to talk to anybody who has, obviously, like, all I can speak to is my experience and like what we've done and everything. And I'm happy to like pass along information. But yeah, I feel like I have to do that because somebody did that for me. And that's why we are where we're at. So yeah.
That's amazing that one person like really changed the trajectory of your lives, and now you have a great platform that you can hopefully use to help others. I mean, I think it's sometimes amazing how life works out like that.
Yes. And like that's the great thing about social media is like it does give people platforms to speak about these things. And this was not something that was well known 10 years ago, or like, definitely not 20 years ago. But people talking about it is why like more kids are like getting the right diagnosis, and or being diagnosed at all. There's all this information now that we have access to, that if you Google it, you're not coming up with some of the stuff that you can, you're just not, because Google is giving you what they want you to see. Like that's the reality of it. Like when I was strictly on Google, I didn't find anything. And then I'm on Instagram and I find so much information. And there's some really, and that's another thing, is like if there is anybody that wants information or pages to follow that has good information, I've got a little list of like holistic practitioners that are on there and that give really good information that you're not going to find on Google.
Do you research everything for you guys? Have a lot of research you have to go through then to find, like, I think you said mom suds. Is that what
Mama
you use for your
that's
mama suds? Yeah. Like, what was that research process like for you?
Oh my God, at the beginning I was reading, y'all would not believe the amount of things that I read at the beginning. Like I spent so much time. I think I found a lot of the products There's a gosh, what is her? I cannot remember. I think it's like non-toxic mama bear,
Uh-huh.
maybe.
Yeah. Have you talked to her before? She's really
No,
cool.
I've never talked to her. I've never talked to her, but I remember like deep diving, going through all her stuff like way early on. This is like a year ago now. I feel like I've lived like 10 lives in the past year. So
I'm
like, a year
sure.
ago for me is like I don't even remember anything. But she has a lot of recommendations for like household stuff and I don't think she recommended this brand, but for like personal care, I use Pure Haven. I don't know if you've heard of Pure Haven, but they have really clean products too.
Well, you're like a super mom. Like all the things that you have done. Like Finley is so lucky to have you and Zach as parents. Like that's so awesome. I mean that you've done so much.
I don't feel that I am, but it does like anytime someone is like just to acknowledge like you've done a lot like that, and I'm like thank you because we have done a lot, we really have. I mean, I don't think it's anything most people wouldn't do for their kid, so that's why I'm like I'm not a super mom. Like I mean this is what anybody would do in our situation, I would hope, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
Not always. They would go with the doctor, what the doctor said.
Yeah.
Two things. One thing, you kind of reframed my frame of thought, because in a sense I would be like, man, I could never do what you're doing, but you did make a good point. Like you would do a lot for your kid, and maybe not exactly the way you're approaching it, but you would do something, right? You'd hope.
Yeah.
But also you guys should get a lot of props for what you're doing, because like we talk about it in the sense of like, our kids are pretty young, that we probably, if something were to come up, it may not have come up yet, and we're in those glory years of not knowing right now. But it's hard even when things are relatively normal.
Yeah.
It's hard, and you guys have 100 times what we're going through, and I think it's really, really cool to hear your frame of thought on it, and you're so positive, and yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah. Give yourself grace. And
It's hard. I mean, I think that we are more positive now. At the beginning it was like very, very hard to be that way, but then
I bet.
through like just everything we've learned, seeing the progress that we already have for one, and then just knowing that there's other people that have been through this and have come out on the other side, like it is possible. That in and of itself is like so, and that's why when people reach out to me and they're like it gets better, I'm like just reaching out and saying that to somebody means so much. Like if you've been through a situation and you can say, hey, like it really does get better, when you're in the thick of it and you hear that, you're like, oh, like, yes, it can get better. And I don't know.
Yeah, like it'll be worth it. Just keep going.
Did you ever feel like there was any people around you who were like, who had toxic positivity? Like, oh, it's okay. You're going to be great. Like,
um, hmm, I feel like, I don't know about the toxic positivity necessarily, but I definitely feel like, I don't know how to put this into words. I think sometimes people don't quite understand how bad things are, and they're very easy to be like they'll try to chalk it up to something else. Like, well, oh, but kids, 3-year-olds do that anyway. And I'm like, but I'm telling you, it's different. Like, even still, like people will do that like that. I know. And I'm like, don't, yeah, no, like there's a difference. Like there is.
well, my question is because a couple episodes back we talked about like mommy burnout. What do you do to keep going when you're in this situation, when you just, because it just seems like stressful.
It's very stressful. And I've gotten better, I think, about like trying to prioritize. Just I don't get the time that a lot of people get. I just don't. That's just my reality, and I've accepted it. That's part of it for me. It's just accepting like this is where I'm at. Most days I don't have time to myself at all, and that's just what it is. But Zach's really good about like when he has time off, like I try to do something for myself, or like when he gets home from work, he immediately takes over the playing and the entertaining or whatever. And just so I can go like breathe. Like today when he got home, I was like, I just need like a minute. Like it was a hard day. And I was like, I just really need to like go in the other room, and I just like went and I just read a little bit and was like, okay, like I'm okay now. But yeah, it doesn't happen often. I don't get to do stuff for myself, like by myself very often, because he's very dependent on me. So that makes it hard. Like I can't leave. I've never been away from him overnight, and I can't be, because yeah, like literally never, even before this. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel so special that you've taken so much time with us. Like, you're giving us this
Seriously.
little bit of free time, and this is huge. Thank you.
But this was enjoyable though too for me, just because I don't, I spend so much of my day just like with a 3-year-old. Like that's literally like, I tell Zach that all the time. I'm like, that's part of it, is that I'm never around, like I don't have adult conversation enough sometimes, and that's like exhausting in and of itself, to feel like you don't have, like, you can't talk to a 3-year-old about like how you're feeling or whatever. And it's like, especially when he doesn't get home till late, and it's like everything's so rushed. I don't feel like I have time to, like, I don't know, just have like a real adult conversation. So
You said you and Zach have become a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
Do you drink coffee now?
That was my one thing. I'm a big coffee person. Like, anyone who knows me, like I love a latte. Okay. I love a good latte. I'm a coffee snob. I'm not going to Starbucks anymore. Okay. Local coffee places only. I'm a coffee snob, and that's
Love
okay.
it.
And that was like my one thing I kept saying all along. I was like, I don't even want to eat anything bad anymore. Like, I'm over that. I really don't. And I meant it. I was like, I just want to be able to drink a latte. Like, I just want a latte. And when we started working with this new practitioner, I was like kind of telling her, the diet we're on and all that. And I was like, but like, I really miss coffee. And she's like, if you have a coffee, I'm okay with that. She's like, that's not going to like completely derail him. You can do that. If that's something that makes you happy, that is better than like completely restricting yourself, which I did for almost a whole year.
Did you cry when she said that? Because I think I would have cried.
I probably did, honestly. I cry a lot these days. I probably cried. But honestly, I felt like there was such a positive shift in me just from like being able to have a coffee. I know that's crazy, but it's like my thing. It was my thing, and then it was just taken away.
That is not
So
crazy at all.
Coffee is a spiritual experience for me. Like, I love the taste, the smell, the texture, like all of that. Like, coffee is very much my jam too.
It's not like, oh my God, I need caffeine. It's not like that at all. It's like, I just like, it's all of it. I just love having a latte. Like, nothing beats it. Nothing beats it for me.
What kind of latte do you drink?
Well, I only do almond milk, and I don't do any flavors. I'm still strict for most people.
But that's all you need.
That's what I drink, an almond milk latte. No flavor. Whenever they ask me, like, oh, do you want sweetener? I'm like, no. Just my almond milk latte. I'm good.
And it's so good too. It's the best. I love it. I will go out of my way every day to go get one. Yeah. I'm probably going to go broke by almond milk latte, honestly.
Worth it.
Worth it.
It's all about balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us where our listeners can follow you on Instagram?
Oh, yeah. So my Instagram handle is Surratt, SURRATT_Holly.
All right. So go give her a follow. You won't regret it, because I just love looking at your stuff. All right. And our last question is either what is your best parenting advice, or not best, but like, what is your parenting advice, or the best parenting advice someone has given you?
I'm probably just going to go with like mine. I've got two. One's going to be go with your gut. Like, your child better than anyone else knows your child. If you think something is wrong, like push. Don't take no for an answer. That's my number one. And number two is just, and I think I've heard some version of this somewhere, so I'm just kind of paraphrasing, I guess, but basically just try to enjoy every season with your child, like even the tough ones, because it is just a season, right? Like when you're in it, it feels like you're never going to be out of it, but you will be, and then it'll be over and you'll be in another season. So it's just like, and that's what I try to do with him, is like enjoy all the little moments. And I think we have to enjoy things that maybe other people take for granted. We're like, we have to enjoy them. We have to take every little bit of happiness and like suck it in. Like, so yeah, just try to enjoy even the hard times the best you can. There you go.
That was good. I got chills.
Those are awesome.
This was really eye-opening, and I really appreciate you taking like the time out of your very busy, hectic, stressful life to talk to us about this, because honestly, like, I didn't know what it was when we were going into it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, most people don't, and that's why I'm like, I want to do this. And I probably didn't do the best job explaining everything. So
You did awesome.
you explained your experience. It was great.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely don't hesitate to like ask for more information, because I can point you in the direction of somebody that can give you like, clearer information.
I mean, I think you probably would have taken that, when you were in your situation, like just knowing there was somebody out there to reach out to. And even if somebody were to reach out to you and say, hey, Holly, did you experience this? And you say, no, but maybe start down this. It's something that might lead to the thing that they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I admire your strength through all of this, because you certainly got me emotional hearing you, because I'm just trying to think of like, if that was my son, like,
yeah,
like you said, what would you would do anything, right? But I can't even begin to imagine what toll that took on you and Zach. And I admire your strength for sure.
And you have a beautiful family, by the way. Like,
I'm probably gonna like get off of here and bawl my eyes out.
And he dresses adorably in those.
Yes.
In those,
so cute.
And those big eyes.
Cute.
His curly
I
hair.
know. His hair. That's what the first thing anybody says. Oh, his hair. His hair. I'm like, or they'll be like, when are you going to cut his hair? And I'm like, I'm never going to cut his hair.
Zach didn't cut his hair in high school. It was like this long.
I think and now
he's bald. Yeah. We talked him into going to cosmetology and getting it cut. I think he did a mohawk. I don't know if you've seen the pictures.
Oh my
I think that was our senior year. Maybe.
He is. Oh Lord.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.